Welcome back, folks. This is Shane. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. So I'm shooting this particular start of the video with the GH5s. We're going to then switch it up to the Panasonic GH5 so you can see the difference. And throughout this video, I'm going to overlay all the footage I've shot using the Panasonic GH5s. Let's see what I can do. So, call me crazy, but I just purchased a GH5s in November of 2020, and this video is probably coming out in either late December or early January, depending on when I finish it. Now, this particular camera I got for an absolute bargain. It was about $1,300 less than it would be normally. I think I paid about $50 more for this than I paid for my GH5 maybe about a year ago. So I've got two GH5s, one I'm shooting with right now, this one, and now the GH5s, and after using all three of these and in combination as well with my Panasonic G85s, I can tell you there's a lot to like about this camera. I'm going to cover the stuff that I've learned about it and things that I think make it stand out, you know, against the GH5, and why you probably wouldn't want to get this if you're going to be choosing one or the other. Now, for static shots like this, the GH5s looks far better in my opinion. You get a wider field of view. You also get a better color science on the GH5s due to that different sensor. One of the biggest complaints about the GH5 is the skin tones can look a little bit green, but that's easy to fix in camera. Once you set your white balance, you can scroll down 2 bars to the left and 2 bars down and set it away from the green, and you'll be able to get some really great results. And I do that on all of my cameras. The GH5s just looks great out of camera. Has a bit more of a sort of reddy, sort of magenta skin tone thing going on, but to my eye, it looks a whole lot more natural than the GH5 does just straight out of camera. Another cool thing about it too, you get a wider field of view. So with the same lens, it actually will pick up more of the room. If I was to swap this over to the GH5s, which I'll probably put some overlays on, you'll see how much wider it is in frame. So my arms are basically touching the sides here almost. With the GH5s, you'll actually see further across. You'll probably even get some of the lights in shot. If you're going to be shooting indoors predominantly on a tripod, I would say go for the GH5s. Overall, the picture quality is far superior. You get way more codecs to choose from, and the skin tones just straight out of camera look so much better. For those who are going to be shooting outdoors a lot of the time or handheld, the GH5 is still the way to go. Now, a lot of people like to use gimbals. It's funny because I bought a gimbal. It's sitting right under my desk right now. And just being able to get the same gimbal-like stabilization or, you know, tripod-like stabilization while using the GH5 is so much better than the results I was getting from the GH5s. Now, I'm not going to claim to be the best handheld videographer out there either. So what I can tell you, if you're using stabilized lenses, you can get some good results. If you're using one of my favorite lenses over here, the 15mm f1.7, which isn't stabilized, it can become a little bit problematic getting those micro jitters with the GH5s. Now, the heavier the rig generally, if you were to build this up and have more to hold on to, you would see less of that. But I haven't come across any issues handheld, even with the 15mm lens. the Final Cut wasn't able to correct thanks to the stabilization tool. That stabilization tool took away all the micro jitters and it barely crops in. So overall, you can get some great results handheld with the GH5s. Now, while the IBIS and the GH5 will give you a much better sort of tripod-like image stabilization, not everyone wants that. And sometimes if you're using the GH5 and you go to pan, it kind of feels like it's stuck. The IBIS takes a moment to release and you see it kind of sort of fight you a little bit. You won't get that at all on the GH5s because there's no image stabilization in there whatsoever. So that'll be a pro or a con depending on what you want. I hope the GH6 ends up being basically this camera, maybe with 6K for those people who want it out there. I won't be shooting in 6K, but if you need it, that'd be cool, but with image stabilization and better image stabilization than that, and it would be the perfect camera in my opinion. And let's talk about the autofocus. This is better than the GH5, but not by a lot. One of the things I like about it, it does have that body detection, and it's pretty reliable depending on what's going on behind you in the scene. So overall, it's still not perfect, but there's ways you can make it better just by understanding the one area autofocus mode. In my opinion, that's still my go-to if I'm using autofocus, but there's nothing to stop you just from clicking it over to manual focus and touching on the screen, and that will lock your spot. Manual focus has gotten so easy. Learn how to use it and you'll love these cameras. Now, without question, the GH5s is quite a bit lighter, even with this 12-60 kit lens over the GH5. It's actually quite surprising. It's only about 200 grams difference. I'll put the specs on screen. Now, on a gimbal, you can get some absolutely great results as well. Just make sure you calibrate your gimbal properly to get rid of those micro jitters. The micro jitters can be a problem, and it's one of those things that if you don't know what you're doing and you put a GH5s on a gimbal and you don't calibrate it properly and do that sort of like micro shake test until it gets it right, you still will see those micro jitters. And if you're not great with a gimbal, you might still be disappointed over how well it works with the GH5. That IBIS system in the GH5 is still one of the best, even in 2020, and these cameras are getting old. But, you know, they still work, and that's why they still sell well. One of the things that really surprised me the most about the GH5s was just how many more recording modes we get. Not only do we get Cinema 4K in 24 frames per second, but we also get it all the way up to 50 or 60, which is fantastic. So we get the regular 25 or 30, depending if you're in the PAL region or NTSC region, and also 50 and 60 frames per second, which is fantastic, and it looks really, really spectacular. One of the things that I love about the Panasonic system is their menu systems. They're awesome. Everything is really intuitive on screen. Going from the GH5 to the GH5s was identical basically within the system, minus a few of the recording codecs, but you'll have no problems transitioning from one to another or owning both if you already have both. I know this camera's been out forever, so people watching this may already own the camera, but the menu systems are fantastic. It's by far the most intuitive menu system on any camera that I've personally used. I haven't used all of them either, but out of the ones I've used over the years, I much prefer this even over the Sony menus and many others. The reason is if you click, say you go to format the internal SD card, you get out of that menu, but then you go back to the settings cog, it will go back to that exact menu that you were in before. I love that. It makes, you know, getting back to where you were nice and quick. So the menu systems, they absolutely get right. Let's talk a little bit about low light, because I feel like Micro Four Thirds, or especially the GH5s, doesn't get the respect it deserves. When I finally got a chance to test this out in low light for myself, and not just by watching other videos, I was really, really impressed. I was like, man, I've done the right thing buying this, because I don't shoot a lot with super low light. I might take this out to say a gig or something like that and record a band or my own band. 3200 ISO still looks really, really good, all the way up to about 6400, and then you start to get a little bit of grain in the image, but it looks so much cleaner and better all throughout that entire spectrum. So yeah, I don't think this gets enough respect as a low light camera, even though the S stands for sensitivity. Yeah, it really works well in the low light compared to the GH5. There is a big difference in just the quality of the image. Now, this isn't a specs video. If you didn't already get the gist of it, there's plenty of those out there over the last few years about this camera. And there's a few channels that really sold me on this in particular. Man, Caleb from DSLR Video Shooters has cost me 2 cameras. And actually more than that. I bought 2 G85s based on his recommendations. And I also bought the GH5s based on his comparison videos against the APS-C, full frame, and GH5. and it looks spectacular, man. That guy really nails his videos there. He's fantastic. And DP Review as well, who used to be the Camera Store TV channel. Those guys, man, Jordan gets just great images with the GH5s. He recently used it on the what's it called? The box camera, the BGH1, I think it's called. And I thought the GH5s left the new BGH1 for dead in the outdoor shots. I'm not sure if something changed. They were using filters on the GH5s or they weren't, or whatever was going on. The picture quality looked fantastic. And I thought, when I saw that, I was like, man, that's all I need. That looks more than professional enough. And for those who like to use the speed boosters with the, the Canon sort of style lenses, you can still do that on this camera as well and get even wider field of view with more light hitting the sensor and all that kind of stuff. But I go for this because it's small, it's compact, I get great results, and with my lens of choice, which is this little guy, I got a couple of these 15mm f1.7s. Look how small that is, and it looks fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is swap over to the GH5s because you've been looking at the GH5 for a while. Let's do it. And now over to the GH5s. Look how much more room we have here. The tripod's in exactly the same spot, and we get such a far wider field of view. This is fantastic. Not only that, the colors look so much better as well, especially on the skin tones. Now, both of these cameras, this was the one I was just shooting with before, this GH5 here, using the same lens, the 15mm f1.7 on the GH5s as well. They're set to 2.4, somewhere around there, and 2.2 actually, there we go. See it on screen. So as you can see, we get a very different image to that of the GH5. They do look different. A lot of people seem to think it's the same camera, but without the stabilization. That's not the case. The image quality is far different. The colors are far different. The low light performance is very different. You get far less recording options with the GH5 as you do with the GH5s. Now, I've never really complained about the low light performance on my GH5 because I don't shoot a lot in low light. So if that's the thing that you really need to do a lot of and you're going to be behind the camera, maybe the GH5s still isn't the option for you. Maybe go full frame and get a little bit of extra stops of low light performance. But any kind of lit room where you've got controlled lighting, the GH5s does do a better job than the GH5 in those kind of conditions. But overall, both of these are fantastic. This is going to be my trinity of cameras now, my trio. GH5s, 2 GH5s, and that's what you'll see on the majority of my videos. The G85s are set up in my other room. I can walk in there, click them on, and be good to go. I may actually do a comparison between the image quality on all three of those cameras, the GH5, the GH5s, and the G85, and we'll see if anyone can actually spot a difference. But, you know, after years of shooting with the GH5s and then getting the 5S, I could notice a big difference in the picture quality almost instantly. It kind of shocked me just how much better it was. But let me know your thoughts if you've got a GH5S or a GH5. Like I said, this video wasn't supposed to be spec heavy. It's just a user kind of guide on my thoughts and feelings about using it after 1 month. So thanks again. Catch you soon. See ya.